So, welcome to A Course of Love, the review of Chapter 2. And the title of this chapter is What Love Is. This is a really important chapter to this course because one of the basic tenets of the whole course is that what we have thought of as love is not what love actually is. And in this chapter, we're going to begin the undoing of what we think of as love. In verse 1, we're told, "You cannot be taught love, but you can be taught to see love where it already exists." Because you identify yourself as a physical form, you believe you are something other than love and separate from love. In fact, you probably think of love as being one of many feelings. When we're children in school, we're taught there's love, there's anger, there's fear, there's doubt, there's happy, there's sad, and love is one of the feelings. But in reality, there are only two feelings. There's love and there's fear. Now, from what we've been conditioned to think of as love, we understand that love and fear are opposites. But in reality, when we look underneath, fear is actually nothing. And love is actually everything. And since love is everything, it isn't separate. It can't be compared to anything because it's everything. What are you going to compare it to? It's everything. It encompasses all. Therefore, it can't be analyzed, it can't be measured, it can't be defined, and so it can't be taught. How are you going to teach something that's everything? So we can't be taught what love is, but we can recognize it. So the question arises in verse 5, if love cannot be taught but only recognized, how is this recognition made possible? And it answers itself through love's effects. For cause and effect are one. Creation is love's effect, as are you. So now we're being told that we are an effect of love. Love was the cause, and we were the effect. In verse 6, to believe you are able to act in love in one instance and act in anger in another, and that both actions originate from the same place, is an error of enormous proportions. You label acting from love good and acting out of anger bad. Love is not something you do. It's what you are. To continue to identify love incorrectly is to continue to be unable to identify yourself. Notice the capital S on self. And throughout the course, that will be used to indicate your true self. The self that isn't separate, that doesn't even think it's separate. The self that you actually are. And as long as you identify love incorrectly, you're not going to be able to recognize your own self. Sorry about that. We cope with the situation of living in hell in various ways. Now, we've become really good at it. So one of the things we try to do is we try to avoid intense feelings in order to stay in control. So we try to kind of stay middle of the road. We don't want to be over anything. We don't want to be overtired, over angry, over sad, even over happy, over in love. We try to kind of stay right there in the middle so that we have some semblance of control in our lives. Another way we cope with it is we find a purpose. We find something where we can help someone, we can make a difference, we can contribute to a cause. So we try to live skillfully, hoping to make some small mark on the world. Whether that's raising good children or, working directly with starving people in Africa, whatever it is, some of us try to find a purpose, a reason to be here. And another way we cope is we live without purpose. We decide, well, I'm just here for the ride and I'm going to enjoy it as much as I can. And I'm going to have fun, I'm going to party, I'm going to laugh, I'm going to be with people. And that's how I'm going to deal with the fact that I'm in hell. And then the fourth one that we've listed here is that we try to make your little corner of the world safe and secure. And all of us do this to some degree. We do whatever we can to make our world reliable, to make our lives predictable. Sometimes that's boring, but we would rather be safe and secure. Boy, in that idea comes the whole idea of nationalism, of war, a whole lot of things that are happening in the world. Greed happen because we're just trying to cope with the fact that we live in hell and we're trying to make ourselves as safe as we can. But in verse 8, he reminds us to think that these are the only options available to creatures of a loving God is insane. And of course, that is the basic idea of this whole dynamic, that we aren't seeing clearly. And if a God set us up like that, we would be insane. And so would God. There is a part of you that knows there is more to life. This is the Christ in you. So how do we know that there is a part of everybody that knows there's more to life? Because otherwise, wouldn't we just be happy with what we have? There's just some part that is always saying, this isn't fair. It's not supposed to be like this. Why is it like this? And so it's that part that just says, nah, this isn't right. That's the Christ in you that says that. So we're given some really powerful questions here, some of which you have probably thought of at some point in your life. The first one, if misery were true, what kind of God would turn away from it and say, oh, well, too bad for you? Not a loving God, that's for sure. We're already told that we are love, so not a loving God. The next question, does God love watching his own creation suffer? Is he some sadistic creator who gets a kick out of watching people suffer? That doesn't make sense, especially if we believe it's a God of love. Then is there even a tiny part of me that is of God? I would imagine, because if there was a creative energy that created me, I imagine there's got to be a tiny part of me that is somehow associated with that creative energy. And if so, if I am a tiny part of God, does that mean that God sees misery too and he has no power over it? Maybe he doesn't love watching his own creation suffer. Maybe he isn't sadistic. Maybe he just doesn't have that kind of power. That one's hard to swallow too, because if he created it, surely he has power over it. And note that when we're talking about God here, we're talking about the creative energy. Not necessarily a person, a man, someone in a body, but a creative energy, the energy of creation. So then the next question, where is the light in this world? We've seen it. We've all seen the light sometimes. But if that's all we see is glimpses here and there, how will darkness ever end at the rate we're going? Darkness just seems to get bigger if you look at it from some points of view. So then the next question, if I'm not like God, why would a loving God extend himself into the universe to create unlike himself? So if you have this big creative energy, that's everything, why would it extend itself and then create something that was completely opposite of what it is? Why would that creative energy create something that was unlike love, unlike peace, and unlike heaven? What would be the point of that? How could that kind of an extension bring about a completely opposite result? None of it makes sense. In verse 14, he sums it up. What answer then is left, but that you do not see reality for what it is? So since the way we have always thought of the world and ourselves and God and how it all works makes absolutely no sense, the only conclusion is we must not have been seeing it clearly. We must not be seeing reality for what it is. In verse 15, we're told, look not to figures from the past to show you the way beyond illusions to the present. Look within, to the one in you who knows the way. Christ is within you, and you rest with God. Now, just to go a little bit further in these definitions. So if we define God as the creative energy, the source, then Christ is the part of God that was extended, and that includes this world that we live in, this experience that we're having. So he tells us right away, don't look at anybody in the past, and that includes Jesus himself, to show you the way beyond illusions to the present. Look within. Look within yourself, to the one in you who knows the way. There is one in you who knows the way, and you will find that one by looking within. And of course, the rest of this course is points all the time on how to look within and how to have the direct experience in order for us to see clearly and remember who we are. What this calls for is a reversal in your thinking. That's why this whole awakening process is a shift, because really the whole world shifts when you see it differently. It has not happened yet because you have separated mind and heart. You try to have a belief system that works, and then your heart is something else. It's what you feel with, and your mind is what you think with. Separating the mind and heart, this is an extension of the original thought of separation. So when we do that, we are engaging and indulging in that original separation thought. In reality, nothing stands apart from you. Nothing. That is a big statement. There is nothing that is outside of you. In verse 17, you do not stand separate and alone. At these words your heart rejoices and your mind rebels. Your mind rebels because it is the stronghold of the ego. Your thought system is what has made the world you see. The ego, its constant companion in its construction. So what has happened here is that the mind has accepted a thought system of separation. And the mind is going to rebel all over the place with this, which is why we appeal to your heart. Because the mind wants to continue with the thought system that it has, because that's the stronghold of the ego, the thoughts. It's your thoughts that have made the world you see. And the ego is always there to help construct this separated version of the world. It's really what the ego was formed for, and it's doing its job very well, and it's reluctant to let go. But not to worry, because it's going to let go. That's what this course is for, to awaken you to who you are. Verse 19. Until you are what you have learned, notice that. It's not a mental process. It's direct experience. You leave room for the ego's machinations. Until this happen, the ego takes pride in what the mind has acquired, even unto the greater peace and contentment offered by your learning. It can and does see itself as better and stronger and more capable of worldly success. It would use all you have learned for its own motivations and pat you on the back for your new abilities. Have you recognized this in yourself? Are you proud of what you've learned? Have you made it a big part of your identity in the world? Well, I'm a spiritual seeker. I'm a Course in Miracles student. Has it become a part of your identity, your persona? If it has, and you take some sort of pride or satisfaction in that, know that the ego is trying to use what you've learned to make itself stronger. It doesn't have a problem with you getting better at living in the world of illusion. It's fine with that. It's happy for that. Where it has a problem is you leaving the world of illusion. You have been brave, but you are weary. It takes a lot of energy to keep this whole illusion going. Help is here. And now we're given a promise. You can't fail to learn what you want to learn. So I guess the question that follows is, do you want to learn it? Are you ready to learn the truth? Because the truth is different from what you thought it was. The ego's not going to become enlightened. When you awaken, you'll see a different world. But for now, in verse 22, we will begin by working on a state of neutrality. The white flag of surrender has been waved and dropped upon a hallowed ground, where neutrality will for a short time reign, before peace breaks out with glad rejoicing. So what we are being guided to do here is to shift into the I don't know mind. Instead of trying to have more answers, instead of trying to apply principles and belief systems and use the mind to figure things out, we're just being asked to recognize that we don't really know what's going on here, and to just rest there for the time being. If we can come to a place of neutrality, then we have at least taken the blinders off to some degree, so that truth can find its way to us. And that's where he leaves us in this chapter. It's just for an appeal to let our old ideas about love and our old ideas about who we are just rest and accept the idea that maybe we really don't know who we are, and maybe we really don't know what we're doing here. And when we come to that place of don't know mind, we have the possibility of learning. The Buddhists call it beginner's mind. They explain it really well by saying, when you think you already have the answers, you can't be taught anything. You can't be shown anything. Your mind is closed. When you recognize that you don't have all the answers, and that the way you're doing it may not have been working out so great, now we're getting somewhere. Now the mind is open, the heart is open, and recognition can begin. So thank you for joining me, and hopefully we'll see you in chapter 3.